I'm Carla, 32 years old, and I was standing in my kitchen holding a certified letter that made my hands shake. My parents had just sent me an itemized invoice for $214,876.43 for raising me. Every diaper, every meal, every birthday party from birth to 18, calculated with interest. The note attached said payment was due before my wedding next month. I set down my coffee, picked up my phone, and called my lawyer instead of my mother. Before we dive into this incredible story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If you've ever dealt with difficult family dynamics around money, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories. Trust me, what happens next will shock you as much as that invoice shocked me. Growing up in our pristine suburban Dallas home, I thought every family operated like a small business. My father Harold was an investment banker who brought spreadsheets home for fun, and my mother Diane sold luxury real estate to oil executives. Our massive house had marble countertops and a pool nobody swam in because maintaining it cost too much, according to the detailed expense reports Mom kept on the refrigerator. I was 8 when I first understood that love had a price tag in the Morrison household. I'd fallen off my bike and broken my arm, and while the emergency room doctor set the bone, I could hear my parents in the hallway calculating the cost. "That's $3,000 with our deductible," Dad muttered. "There goes the vacation fund." For the next month, every time I needed help cutting my food or getting dressed, Mom would sigh and say, "This injury is getting expensive." She actually kept a running tally on a notepad labeled Carla's broken arm debt. My younger brother Blake arrived when I was 3, and from day one, the rules were different for him. While I earned computer time by doing extra chores valued at $5 per hour, Blake played video games freely. My straight A's earned me points toward a new backpack, but Blake's C's were met with tutors and understanding. "Boys develop differently," Mom would say, hiring him another specialist while reminding me that my piano lessons came out of my college fund. The family economy was simple yet cruel. Good behavior and achievements earned credits. Mistakes created debits. By age 12, I had a literal ledger in my room where I tracked my worth. Winning the state science fair added $500 to my value. Getting a B in French subtracted $200. The morning I woke up with the flu and missed my SAT prep class, Dad docked $50 for wasting paid instruction time. "You need to understand the value of money," he lectured during our monthly financial reviews at the dining room table. Blake would be upstairs playing Xbox while I sat through PowerPoint presentations about my cost-benefit ratio as a daughter. Did I bring enough honor to the family name to justify the grocery bills? Was my academic performance sufficient ROI for their investment? At 16, I discovered the first major betrayal when a credit card application was denied. The reason? My credit was already ruined. My parents had opened 3 cards in my name when I turned 15, maxing them out for home renovations. "We're building equity for your future," Mom explained when I confronted them. "This house will be yours someday." She failed to mention they were planning to sell it. MIT acceptance should have been a celebration. Instead, it triggered a 3-hour strategy session about how my future salary would support their retirement. Dad had charts projecting my earnings with automatic deductions for parental ROI. They'd calculated that 18 years of raising me at their lifestyle level, with inflation, meant I owed them a minimum of 15% of my gross income for life. "Blake won't make as much," Mom explained matter-of-factly. "He's more of a creative type. You're our retirement plan, Carla. That's why we invested so much in your education." The son who played video games all day was a creative type. The daughter who built robots and won science fairs was an investment vehicle. College became my escape hatch, but not the way they intended. While they paid Blake's fraternity dues and spring break trips, I worked 3 jobs at MIT. The campus library, a local tutoring center, and weekend shifts at a lab analyzing data. My parents visited once, spent the entire time criticizing my dorm room size, and complained about the restaurant I chose for dinner. "We raised you with better taste than this," Dad said, making me pay for the meal that cost a week of my food budget. Every achievement became theirs. When I made Dean's List, Mom told her book club how her parenting investment was paying off. When I landed internships, Dad updated his spreadsheets with my projected lifetime earnings. They treated me like a stock portfolio, constantly evaluating whether I was beating market expectations. Blake, meanwhile, changed majors 4 times on their dime. He's finding himself, they'd say. You already know your purpose, to take care of this family. The weekend before graduation, they presented me with a transition plan. It detailed exactly how much I should send home monthly, starting with my first paycheck. The document included provisions for cost of living increases and bonuses. We're not asking for much, Mom insisted. Just what's fair for creating you. Seattle rain had never looked so beautiful as the day I drove into the city, my second-hand Honda packed with everything I owned. The software engineering position at a startup paid $65,000, and my parents had already calculated their monthly cut, but I had other plans. The 3,000-mile distance between us wasn't accidental. My first apartment was a studio so small the bed touched 3 walls, but it was mine. No spreadsheets on the refrigerator. No monthly financial reviews. No invoices for existing. I sent my parents birthday cards and called on holidays, nothing more. The first time Mom asked when their support payments would begin, I pretended the connection was bad and hung up. Building a life without their shadow took time. I threw myself into work, staying late not because I had to, but because I loved coding. My manager, Sandra, became the mentor my parents never were. She taught me negotiation, helped me navigate office politics, and never once mentioned what I owed her for the guidance. That's what good leaders do, she said when I tried to buy her an expensive thank you gift. They lift others up. The startup grew, and so did my confidence. By 25, I was lead engineer. By 27, senior architect. My salary doubled, then tripled. I discovered rock climbing at the company gym, joined a hiking group, and finally started feeling like a real person instead of an investment property. That's where I met David. He was attempting to explain the difference between dog and cat anatomy to another hiker who'd asked about mountain lions. His enthusiasm for veterinary medicine was infectious, his laugh genuine. When he asked me to coffee, he insisted on paying. I asked, I pay, he said simply. No calculations. No ledgers. Just kindness. 6 months into dating, my parents visited. I'd avoided it as long as possible, but Mom threatened to fly out anyway, and I wanted damage control. David witnessed the full Morrison experience. They criticized my apartment's location, questioned my furniture choices, and spent dinner interrogating him about his earning potential. When the check came, they sat silently until I paid. In the car later, Mom presented me with an itemized bill for their flights, hotel, and time away from work. That was horrible, David said after they left. They charged you for visiting. His family was nothing like mine. His parents, Sharon and Frank, owned a small landscaping business and had raised 3 kids on love and encouragement. The first time I met them, Sharon hugged me like she'd known me forever. Frank taught me to play cribbage without keeping score. Blake called occasionally, usually for money. Law school was expensive, he'd say, and Mom and Dad were tapped out. Could I help? The first time, I sent $500. The second time, I asked about loans. Why would I take out loans when you have money? He responded. That's when he let slip that our parents had paid his entire undergraduate tuition while I worked 3 jobs. And his apartment. And his car. Everything changed when the startup went public. I'd been employee number 12, with stock options that nobody expected to amount to much. Suddenly, my net worth had 7 figures. I told no one except David, but somehow my parents knew within a week. The calls started immediately. Dad had investment opportunities. Mom found a perfect retirement property that needed a down payment. Blake was considering business school. Their requests weren't subtle anymore. They were demands. We created that wealth, Dad actually said. Without us, you'd be nothing. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Martinez, who specialized in family financial abuse. Your parents monetized their love, she explained. They turned parenting into a business transaction. You don't owe them anything for meeting their legal obligation to raise you. It took months to internalize that message. The extended family got involved next. Aunt Martha, Mom's sister, called me heartless for abandoning my parents in their time of need. Cousin Rachel said I was selfish. Uncle Pete sent a Bible verse about honoring thy father and mother. They'd all heard Mom's version, where I was an ungrateful daughter hoarding wealth while my parents struggled. Nobody mentioned their 6-bedroom house or luxury cars. I instituted boundaries. Monthly calls only, timed to 30 minutes. No financial discussions. The first time Mom brought up money, I hung up. She called back screaming. I didn't answer. Blake texted that I was being cruel. I archived the message without responding. David held me while I cried, not from sadness, but from the relief of finally protecting myself. You're not responsible for their choices, he reminded me whenever the guilt crept in. They chose to view you as an investment. You're choosing to be a person. His support never wavered, even when my family drama overshadowed our dates. When he proposed during a sunrise hike on Mount Rainier, with no audience except curious marmots, I knew I'd found my real family. The moment I said yes to David's proposal, I knew my parents would try to hijack our wedding. What I didn't expect was how quickly and viciously they'd move. The engagement ring was still new on my finger when my phone rang at 6 in the morning. Mom had somehow already seen the Instagram post David's sister made. A spring wedding gives us 8 months to plan, she announced, not bothering with congratulations. I'll need the guest list by next week. The Morrison family has standards to maintain. In the background, I could hear Dad already calculating costs. If we book the country club now, we can get a corporate discount through my firm. David found me stress baking at midnight a week later, surrounded by 3 pies and a half-finished cake. The dining room table was covered in spreadsheets my parents had emailed, detailing their requirements for the wedding. They wanted 150 of their business associates and country club friends invited. The cheapest option they'd presented cost $90,000. We could elope, David suggested, flour in his hair from where he'd brushed against my apron. Vegas is nice this time of year. I loved him for trying, but I wanted our friends there. Our real friends. Sandra from work, who'd mentored me. My hiking group. His veterinary school buddies. The people who actually knew us, not my father's golf partners who couldn't pick me out of a lineup. I sent my parents our actual plan. 75 guests at a vineyard outside Seattle. Simple ceremony, good food, dancing under the stars. The response came within hours, a formal letter that might as well have been a declaration of war. If their guest list wasn't accommodated, they would not attend. Furthermore, they'd make sure everyone knew why. Blake called that night, his script obvious. Just give them what they want, Carla. You can afford it. When I asked why my wedding should be a networking event for our parents, he got defensive. They've done everything for us. Don't you think you owe them this one day? The irony of discussing what I owed while he lived rent-free in the condo they'd bought him was lost on Blake. The third betrayal came 2 weeks later through David's mother. Sharon called, her usually warm voice strained. My parents had reached out to her and Frank, expressing concerns about the wedding and their daughter's mental state. According to Diane Morrison, I had anger management issues, a history of instability, and had abandoned my family when they needed me most. She warned Sharon that I might do the same to David. I didn't believe a word, Sharon assured me. Frank wanted to hang up immediately, but I let her talk. Carla, honey, I'm a therapist. I recognize narcissistic abuse when I hear it. She'd taken notes during the call, documenting the lies for potential future legal needs. My future mother-in-law was already protecting me better than my biological mother ever had. Sharon offered resources about toxic family dynamics and suggested a book about daughters of narcissistic mothers. Reading it felt like looking in a mirror. Every chapter described my childhood, the manipulation disguised as love, the emotional invoices that preceded the financial ones. David read it too, wanting to understand. He held me through the grief of realizing I'd never had real parents, just people who saw me as a return on investment. The extinction burst started when we went low contact 2 months before the wedding. Extinction burst, Dr. Martinez explained, is when a narcissist escalates dramatically as they lose control. My parents certainly delivered. They called my office so frequently that HR got involved. They showed up at my workplace, causing a scene in the lobby that required security intervention. I was in a code review when the receptionist paged me. My parents were downstairs, demanding to see me about a family emergency. I watched on the security monitor as my mother performed for the gathering crowd. "We just want to see our daughter," she wailed. "We don't understand why she's doing this to us." Dad stood beside her, the picture of a wounded father. Security escorted them out when they refused to leave. Mom's parting shot echoed through the marble lobby. "We made you everything you are, Carla. Everything." My coworkers pretended they hadn't heard, but I saw the looks. The questions. HR scheduled a meeting to discuss security measures and offered me time off, which I declined. I wouldn't let them steal my career too. David's brother Mike, a Marine veteran, offered to coordinate wedding security. "They won't get within 100 feet of you," he promised. His military buddies volunteered as unofficial bouncers, refusing any payment. "Family takes care of family," Mike said. Real family. I cried at that, the good kind of tears. The texts from flying monkeys increased. Family friends I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly worried about my well-being. Church ladies from Mom's Bible study sent messages about forgiveness. Dad's business partners reached out about reconciliation. Each message had the same theme, that I was cruel, ungrateful, mentally unstable. That I owed my parents better. Through it all, David remained steady. He fielded calls when I couldn't, calmly explaining that we were having the wedding we wanted. He hired a photographer who specialized in difficult family situations, someone who could be discreet about security concerns. He found a wedding coordinator who'd handled volatile family dynamics before. He protected our joy while I battled my guilt. "Your parents had 18 years to earn an invitation through love," he said one night. "They chose to send invoices instead. That's not on you." He was right, but knowing and feeling are different things. Every happy wedding planning moment carried the shadow of their absence, not because I wanted them there, but because I wished I had parents worth wanting. 1 month before the wedding, I was comparing flower arrangements when the doorbell rang. The certified mail required a signature, and the return address made my stomach drop. Morrison & Associates, my parents' financial planning firm. My hands trembled as I signed, knowing this envelope contained something worse than their usual manipulations. David was at work, and I almost waited for him, but curiosity won. The weight of the envelope suggested multiple pages. I sat at our kitchen table, the same one where we'd planned our future, and opened what would become evidence in a court case that made local news. The first page was a formal letter from my parents' attorney, Stan Morrison, Dad's golf buddy who'd handled their real estate deals. "Dear Ms. Morrison," it began, as if I were a stranger. "On behalf of Harold and Diane Morrison, please find enclosed an itemized statement for parental services rendered from June 15, 1992, through June 15, 2010. Payment in full is expected within 30 days. The second page made me laugh, the kind of shocked, disbelieving laugh that comes when reality breaks. Invoice for childhood services was centered at the top in bold letters. Below, in meticulous detail, were 18 years of expenses. Hospital delivery, $8,432. Newborn essentials package, $2,100. Monthly food costs, averaging $300, multiplied by 216 months, $64,800. Page after page detailed every aspect of raising a child, transformed into line items. Clothing budget, $18,000. School supplies, $4,200. Transportation services, which apparently meant driving me to school, $12,000. Medical and dental care, $28,000. Each entry included subcategories. Under clothing, they'd separated everyday wear from special occasions, school uniforms from sports equipment. The most insulting entries were the intangibles they'd somehow priced. Emotional support surcharge, $45,000. Homework assistance, $8,000. Character development activities, $12,000. They'd assigned monetary value to bedtime stories, birthday parties, even Christmas morning. Page 12 contained holiday joy provision, itemized by year, totaling $15,000. Attached as appendices were actual receipts, some faded with age. A receipt for my first bicycle. The invoice for braces. Report cards with notes about their investment in academic excellence. Photos of birthday parties with catering costs circled. They'd documented my entire childhood not with love, but with accounting software. At the bottom, they'd calculated interest at 7%, compounded annually. The total came to $214,876.43. The final page was the threat. If payment wasn't received within 30 days, they would pursue legal action. Additionally, they reserved the right to contact my employer, publish the debt on social media, and take all necessary steps to recover their investment. It ended with a postscript, handwritten by Mom. "We sacrificed everything for you, Carla. It's time you recognized that sacrifice financially." I called Maya before I called David. My best friend since MIT was now a successful attorney specializing in family law. She answered on the second ring. "Tell me they didn't actually do it," she said, having heard enough stories to predict my parents' escalation. "Oh, they did it," I confirmed, sending her photos of every page. Her laughter echoed through the phone. "This is legally unenforceable and ethically insane. I'm coming over." Maya arrived with her laptop and legal precedents already researched. "Parents have a legal obligation to provide for their minor children," she explained. "You can't retroactively charge for meeting basic parental duties. Courts have thrown out similar cases with prejudice." She showed me case after case of parents trying to sue their adult children for childhood expenses. All dismissed. Most judges added scathing commentary about parental responsibility. David came home to find us surrounded by legal printouts and the remnants of my stress baking. 6 pies cooled on the counter, evidence of my anxiety. He read the invoice silently, his face cycling through disbelief, anger, and finally, protective fury. "They kept receipts for your diapers for 32 years. He held up the faded receipt from 1992. "Who does that?" "Narcissists who always plan to cash in," Maya answered. "This isn't spontaneous. The organization, the interest calculations, the legal formatting, they've been planning this." She was right. The receipts were too well preserved, the documentation too thorough. They'd raised me as a business venture, keeping books the entire time. David called his mother, putting her on speaker. Sharon's therapy background provided crucial insight. This is financial abuse taken to an extreme. They're trying to maintain control through debt. It's not about the money, it's about keeping you obligated to them forever. She'd seen similar patterns in her practice, but never to this degree. "Keep every document. You'll need them." Blake's text arrived that evening. "Mom and Dad told me about the bill. Just pay it, Carla. You have the money and you know they struggled raising us." I screenshot it without responding. Maya insisted on documentation for everything. His follow-up texts grew increasingly aggressive. "Stop being selfish. They gave you everything. I need that money too." The last text revealed the truth. "They promised me $100,000 for my house down payment when you pay them back. Don't ruin this for me." My brother had known. He'd known they were planning to bill me and had already earmarked his share. The fourth betrayal stung differently because Blake had watched them prepare this invoice and said nothing. He'd spent months planning how to spend money extorted from his sister. "We're fighting this," Maya declared, officially retained with the friends and family discount of $5,000. "They want to play legal games? Let's play." She drafted our response that night, a masterpiece of legal precision that made their invoice look like the delusional document it was. We wouldn't just defend, we'd counterattack. Harassment, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The Morrisons had awakened a legal shark who happened to be my best friend. "Are you okay?" David asked later, finding me staring at my childhood photos they'd included as evidence. Each one showing a little girl who thought she was loved, not realizing she was accumulating debt. "I will be," I promised. "Maya's going to destroy them, and we're going to have a beautiful wedding. Without them." He kissed my forehead, and I knew I'd chosen the right family. the one that didn't come with invoices. Maya transformed our dining room into a war room within 48 hours. Legal books, printed precedents, and color-coded folders covered every surface. If they want to weaponize the legal system, she said, highlighting another absurd line item from their invoice, we'll show them what actual lawyers do. Her cease and desist letter was a work of art, professionally devastating while maintaining technical precision. The letter went beyond demanding they stop. Maya included counts of harassment, defamation per se, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. She cited their attempts to contact my employer as tortious interference with business relations. The security footage of them screaming in my workplace lobby was attached as Exhibit A. Your client's pattern of escalating harassment has created substantial documentation, she wrote. We are prepared to use all of it. Blake cracked within days of receiving his subpoena. Maya had included him as a potential witness, and the legal reality shattered his entitlement. He forwarded years of emails between our parents, desperate to avoid involvement. The messages revealed the depth of their planning. They'd started the spreadsheet when I was in college, adding retroactive entries for my entire childhood. Carla's earning potential was a frequent subject, with projections based on my major and internship performance. One email from Mom to Dad made my skin crawl. If we position this correctly, she'll be paying us for life. It's only fair, considering what we invested. Another showed Dad calculating compound interest rates. 7% seems reasonable for family, he'd written. The most damaging email was recent, just after my engagement. Time to collect before she wastes our investment on that veterinarian. My employer's HR department took the harassment seriously. They'd already documented the lobby incident, but Maya's letter prompted a comprehensive review. The legal team discovered my parents had called board members, claiming I'd embezzled funds to avoid family debts. They'd created a website, ungrateful.com, with my photo, salary information, and their version of events. IT security found 3 attempts to access my work email, traced to my father's IP address. This goes beyond family drama, the chief legal counsel told me. They're attacking our employee and our company's reputation. We're considering our own action. The corporate lawyers coordinating with Maya created an intimidating united front. My parents had expected to bully an isolated daughter. Instead, they faced a tech company's legal department and a motivated family lawyer who happened to be my best friend. Stan Morrison withdrew as my parents' counsel within a week. Maya's response had included a bar complaint for frivolous litigation and abuse of process. Stan might golf with my father, but he wouldn't risk his license for a case that legal blogs were already mocking. Parents sue daughter for being born went viral on legal Twitter, with lawyers competing to write the most scathing commentary. My parents hired a new attorney, someone Maya recognized as an ambulance chaser who takes cases real lawyers won't touch. His demand letter was even more aggressive, adding emotional damages for parental alienation and intentional infliction of distress on elderly parents. Maya laughed while reading it. Elderly? Your mom's 58. And they're claiming you caused them distress by not paying a bill for being born. Local news picked up the story after court documents became public. Seattle parents bill adult daughter $214,000 for childhood made the evening news. Reporters called constantly, but Maya handled them brilliantly. My client's parents kept receipts for 32 years, planning to bill their child for basic parental obligations. That speaks for itself. The public response was overwhelmingly supportive, though some commenters called me spoiled for not honoring my parents. The morning show ambush was peak manipulation. My parents appeared on Wake Up Seattle, presenting themselves as heartbroken retirees abandoned by their successful daughter. Mom cried on cue while Dad displayed his meticulous records of their investment. The host seemed skeptical, especially when Dad couldn't explain why Blake hadn't received a similar invoice. Boys are different, Mom said, destroying their own argument about equal parental investment. Maya filed our countersuit that afternoon. The complaint was a beautiful destruction of their entire narrative. Count 1, defamation with actual malice. Count 2, false light invasion of privacy. Count 3, harassment. Count 4, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The damages request was symbolic, exactly $214,876.43. Let them see their own number in a real lawsuit, Maya said. The restraining order hearing revealed how far they'd fallen. My parents arrived looking haggard, their confident facade cracking. The judge, the Honorable Patricia Chin, had clearly read the entire file. Her first question to their attorney was, "Counselor, are you seriously arguing that parents can bill their children for childhood expenses?" The lawyer stammered about extraordinary costs and verbal contracts, while Judge Chen's expression grew increasingly stern. Our evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, emails, website screenshots, recorded voicemails where mom screamed that I was stealing from them by existing without paying. David testified about their behavior during visits, how they'd itemized every meal while demanding I pay. Sharon provided expert testimony about financial abuse dynamics in families. Even the HR director appeared, describing the workplace harassment and security concerns. The fifth betrayal came during cross-examination. Their lawyer revealed that my cousin Rachel, my chosen maid of honor, had been feeding them information. She'd reported our wedding venue, vendor choices, even quoted conversations where I'd expressed hurt about my family. The betrayal cut deep. Rachel and I had been close since childhood, bonding over similar family dynamics. To learn she'd been their spy destroyed something precious. Judge Chen's ruling was swift and scathing. The permanent restraining order covered 2 years, with criminal penalties for violation. She ordered my parents to cease all contact, remove all online content about me, and stop their harassment campaign. Parents have a legal and moral obligation to raise their children without expectation of repayment, she stated. This court will not enforce a bill for being born, nor tolerate the harassment that followed. The plaintiff's countersuit will proceed. My parents' faces during the ruling showed their shock. They genuinely believed the legal system would validate their parental invoice. Dad tried to speak, but his lawyer grabbed his arm. Mom stared at me with pure hatred. As court security escorted them out, she hissed, "You'll regret this." The officer heard and added it to his report. Another violation before they'd even left the building. Maya celebrated with expensive whiskey while I processed the loss of my extended family. The cousin who'd been in my wedding party. The aunts who'd taught me to bake. The grandparents who'd, actually, Grandmother Rose called that night. "I'm writing them out of my will," she announced. What kind of people bill their child for diapers? Your grandfather would be appalled. At 89, she was done with their nonsense. Family isn't about blood, David reminded me as we updated our wedding security plans. Rachel was uninvited, and passwords were added to all vendor accounts. Mike coordinated with off-duty police officers for the ceremony. It felt like planning a witness protection wedding, but we'd have the marriage we wanted. Surrounded by chosen family who loved without invoices, supported without spreadsheets, and never calculated the cost of caring. The morning of our wedding dawned crisp and clear, one of those perfect Seattle spring days that made the mountain visible from everywhere. I should have been focused on marrying David, but my phone had been buzzing since 5 a.m. with alerts. My parents had launched their final assault, a coordinated social media campaign timed for maximum impact. UngratefulDaughter.com had been updated overnight with what they called the truth about Carla Morrison. They'd posted my college transcripts, tax returns they'd somehow obtained, and photos from my childhood with price tags photoshopped over everything. My baby picture had $8,432 delivery stamped across it. A photo from my 5th birthday showed a cake labeled $347 plus emotional labor. The cruelty of reducing my existence to dollar signs on what should be my happiest day was precisely their intention. Maya arrived at the bridal suite armed with emergency injunctions. "Judge Chin is not happy about the contempt of court," she reported. "But let me handle this. You focus on marrying that wonderful veterinarian." She'd already contacted the hosting service about the website violations. Her law firm's letterhead carried weight that my parents hadn't anticipated. "They picked the wrong day to mess with us," she promised. My bridesmaids rallied like an army. Sarah from work monitored social media, reporting and blocking accounts. David's sister Emma fielded calls from reporters who'd received anonymous tips about a wedding confrontation. The photographer arrived early to coordinate with security, having dealt with volatile family situations before. "We'll get your beautiful moments," she assured me, without any unwanted guests in frame. The venue had been transformed into a fairy tale, with string lights and wildflowers everywhere, but Mike had also transformed it into a secure perimeter. Off-duty police officers in plain clothes mingled with guests. Security cameras covered every entrance. The wedding coordinator had a photo of my parents at every checkpoint. It felt like preparing for war rather than celebrating love, but that was the reality of protecting joy from those who'd monetize it. Blake's text arrived while my makeup artist worked. "They're planning something. Dad hired people to protest. Please just pay them so we can all move on." I showed it to Maya, who added it to her evidence folder. Even now, Blake thought the solution was my capitulation. He couldn't comprehend that some things were worth more than money, like dignity, self-respect, and the right to exist without paying for the privilege. Grandmother Rose arrived early, wheelchair decorated with ribbons, fire in her eyes. "I've got bail money if needed," she announced. "Nobody ruins my granddaughter's wedding." She'd brought cousin Jeffrey, my father's estranged brother, who'd been exiled from the family 20 years ago for refusing to invest in one of Dad's schemes. "Harold did the same thing to me," Jeffrey said. "Tried to bill me for Christmas gifts from childhood when I wouldn't fund his business." "You're breaking the cycle." The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock. At 3:30, Mike got the alert. My parents had arrived with signs and a small group of protesters who were clearly paid. They stood at the venue entrance with posters reading, "She owes us $214,876.43, and ungrateful daughter gets married on our dime." Local news crews, tipped off by my parents, were already filming. The spectacle they'd created was designed to humiliate me on my wedding day. "We're going out the back entrance," the coordinator announced, shifting to Plan B seamlessly. While security dealt with the circus out front, we moved the ceremony to the garden location. Guests were redirected quietly, and within minutes, everyone who mattered was seated among the roses. Maya stayed with law enforcement to handle the trespassing violations while I focused on what actually mattered. David waited at the altar, tears already streaming. He'd chosen to face this chaos with me, to build a family based on love rather than ledgers. Behind him stood Mike and his other groomsmen, protective and proud. Our officiant, Sharon's colleague who understood family trauma, smiled warmly as my grandmother walked me down the aisle. "Your real father is here in spirit," Rose whispered, meaning my grandfather who died before my parents could bill him for something. The ceremony itself was everything we'd wanted. Intimate, genuine, filled with people who loved us without calculating the cost. David's vows made me cry. "Carla, you survived a childhood where love had price tags to become someone who gives freely. You transformed pain into purpose, isolation into connection. You chose to build rather than bill, to love rather than ledger. I promise to spend our life together showing you what unconditional actually means." My vows were harder to get through. "David, you saw me at my most vulnerable and never once asked what I was worth. You valued my heart over my earnings, my dreams over my debt. You stood between me and those who'd auction my affection. With you, I'm not an investment or an asset. I'm just Carla. You're Carla. Forever." Even the security guards were wiping their eyes. During photos, we could hear the commotion from the parking lot. Police were issuing citations for trespassing and disturbing the peace. My parents' paid protesters had disappeared once they realized actual law enforcement was involved. Mom's wails echoed across the property, performing victimhood for the news cameras. "We just wanted to see our daughter married," she cried, neglecting to mention the signs demanding money. The reception was pure joy. Sharon gave a toast about chosen family that had everyone reaching for tissues. Jeffrey shared stories about my grandparents, the ones who'd loved without invoices. Maya updated us quietly. My parents had been arrested for violating the restraining order and trespassing. They'd spend my wedding night in jail. Best wedding gift ever, she whispered. The news coverage was already shifting from their narrative to the truth about parents who'd tried to crash their daughter's wedding with billing demands. Let's see them try to bill you for this, Grandmother Rose said during the parent dances, having claimed that honor. We swayed to "What a wonderful world" while she told me about my grandfather. He would have been so proud. You broke their cycle of greed. That takes more strength than they'll ever have. She'd already updated her will, leaving everything to me with specific language preventing my parents from any claims. As we cut the cake, I realized their absence felt like presence. Not having toxic people at your wedding is its own gift. Every genuine smile, every heartfelt hug, every moment of pure celebration was possible because we'd excluded those who'd put a price on everything. Our wedding cost a third of what my parents had demanded, and it was perfect. Love without ledgers, joy without invoices, family without financial obligations. David and I shared our last dance to "At Last" by Etta James. Around us, our chosen family celebrated. Former colleagues, hiking buddies, college friends, and the family members brave enough to defy my parents. These people had shown up without calculating what they'd gain. They danced at our wedding because they loved us, not because they saw us as investments matured and ready for harvest. No regrets? David asked as we spun slowly. Through the windows, we could see the last police car leaving with my parents. Tomorrow there would be legal consequences, social media to handle, family divisions to navigate. But tonight, we'd won. We'd had our perfect wedding surrounded by people who understood that love isn't a transaction and family isn't a financial institution. No regrets, I promised. This is exactly the family I choose. 3 months after our wedding, my parents' final legal attempt collapsed in spectacular fashion. Judge Chin not only dismissed their lawsuit with prejudice, but sanctioned their second attorney for filing frivolous claims. The judgment was public and scathing. Local legal blogs dissected it with glee, using phrases like "unprecedented narcissistic delusion" and "the most ridiculous complaint ever filed in family court." My parents were ordered to pay my legal fees of $18,000, an ironic reversal of their demanded invoice. The news coverage shifted completely after the wedding fiasco. Parents who billed daughter for birth arrested at wedding became the dominant narrative. The footage of them being led away in handcuffs while holding invoice signs was internet gold. Memes spread faster than Maya could track. Someone auto-tuned mom's parking lot wails into a song called "Pay Me Back for Your Diapers" that went viral on TikTok. Their attempt to shame me had backfired into their own public humiliation. Blake reached out after the court-ordered payment, his entitlement replaced with panic. "They're using my college fund to pay your lawyer," he complained. "This is destroying our family." I reminded him that the family was already destroyed when they decided to bill me for existing. He begged me to drop the countersuit, swearing he'd learned his lesson. But when I asked if he thought their invoice was wrong, he hedged. "Maybe they went too far, but you do owe them something." That told me everything. Therapy with Dr. Kim, Sharon's recommended colleague, became my twice-weekly anchor. She specialized in adult children of narcissistic parents and financial abuse survivors. Your parents monetized their love so completely that you internalized transactional thinking, she explained. You literally apologize for taking up space. We need to deprogram that. Sessions were hard, excavating years of buried pain, but David attended some with me, learning how to support without enabling my guilt. The breakthrough came when discussing children. David and I wanted a family, but I'd been terrified of becoming my parents. What if I start calculating costs? I asked Dr. Kim. What if I resent them for needing things? She helped me see that my awareness was my protection. My parents never questioned their approach. They'd felt entitled to bill me because they genuinely believed children were investments. My horror at the thought meant I'd already broken the cycle. Work became a refuge and platform. The company fully supported me after my parents' harassment, even featuring my story in a presentation about supporting employees through personal challenges. I was promoted to Chief Technology Officer partly because I'd shown grace under pressure. Anyone who can handle that level of family crazy while shipping products on time deserves the corner office, the CEO joked. But it was true. Surviving my parents had given me skills in boundary setting and crisis management. The mentorship program I started grew from personal need to help others. Breaking financial chains began as informal coffee meetings with young women in tech dealing with family money dynamics. It expanded into a formal program with workshops, resources, and connections to therapists specializing in financial abuse. The first cohort included 50 women, many crying during our initial meeting as they heard their own stories reflected in mine. Speaking at the Women in Tech conference terrified me, but the response validated the exposure. From invoice to independence, breaking free from transactional family relationships drew a standing room-only crowd. I shared the actual invoice on screen, hearing gasps as people read the itemized childhood. This isn't about money, I explained. It's about parents who see children as retirement funds rather than humans deserving unconditional love. The questions afterward lasted 2 hours, with woman after woman sharing similar stories. Creating the support network happened organically. Adult Children of Transactional Parents started as a Facebook group and evolved into a nonprofit. We provided resources, vetted therapists, legal guidance, and most importantly, validation. The stories poured in. Parents charging adult children rent for childhood bedrooms retroactively. Invoices for college despite scholarships. Bills for emotional support during divorce. Each story reinforced that I wasn't alone, that financial abuse disguised as parenting was more common than anyone acknowledged. 1 year after the wedding, Blake called again. This time, he was $30,000 in debt to our parents. They'd started charging him rent for the condo they owned, backdated to when he'd moved in. When he couldn't pay, they'd invoiced him for his MBA, law school applications, even his car insurance from college. I didn't believe you, he admitted. I thought you were being dramatic. But they kept receipts for everything. They're threatening to evict me if I don't sign a payment plan. I sent him resources but maintained boundaries. I can't save you from them, I explained. But Dr. Kim has referrals, and our support group meets Wednesdays. He attended one meeting, looking shell-shocked as others shared their stories. Watching him realize our parents had simply shifted targets was painful but necessary. He'd chosen their side for money. Now he was learning what that loyalty cost. Grandmother Rose passed peacefully in her sleep, leaving me everything as promised. Her will included a letter explaining her decisions. Carla broke the family curse of transactional love. She deserves the fruits of unconditional affection. The estate was modest but meaningful, including her jewelry and photo albums from before my parents' emotional accounting began. Pictures of them holding baby me with actual joy, before they'd started calculating my worth. Evidence they'd once been capable of love without ledgers. My parents contested the will, naturally. But Grandmother Rose had been thorough, including a no-contest clause that would disinherit them entirely if they challenged it. Their lawyer advised accepting the inevitable. Blake received nothing, which he blamed on me rather than his choices. The family fracture was complete, but I'd gained something worth more than any inheritance. Freedom. David and I announced our pregnancy at Thanksgiving, surrounded by chosen family. Sharon cried happy tears while Frank immediately started planning grandpa projects for the nursery. My hiking friends showered us with handmade gifts and promises of babysitting. Maya volunteered as auntie-lawyer for any future legal needs. This child would know only abundance of love, never invoiced for needing it. During my 3rd trimester, I wrote letters to my future child. Promises I'd never charge them for existing. Assurances that their worth wasn't tied to their achievements. Guarantees that love came without interest rates or payment plans. David found me crying over one letter and added his own lines. You are not an investment. You are not our retirement plan. You are our child, loved beyond measure, valued beyond money. Sarah Blake Chin was born at dawn, named for my mentor and grandmother who'd shown me unconditional love. As I held her, I whispered, You'll never receive an invoice for being born. That's my promise. David captured the moment, tears streaming as he held us both. In that hospital room, surrounded by chosen family who'd driven through the night to meet her, I understood what my parents had missed. Love isn't a transaction. Family isn't a financial institution. Children aren't investments. They're gifts we're privileged to nurture, not bills we're entitled to collect. Sarah would grow up knowing her worth was inherent, not earned. She'd never calculate the cost of our affection or worry that her achievements affected her value. She'd be free in ways I'd fought to become. The cycle was broken. The invoices stopped here. And that freedom? Priceless. Would you believe some parents actually bill their children for raising them? If you've dealt with family who put a price on love, share your story in the comments below. And if you found value in this tale of breaking free from transactional relationships, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of triumph over toxic family dynamics. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that they don't owe their parents for being born. Thank you for joining me today, and remember, real love doesn't come with invoices.